analyst predicted that we were likely going to see this, and he said so just yesterday, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're quite out of the woods just yet. But what about XRP? Well, of course, it's just moving in tandem with the rest of the market, but there are a couple popular chart analysts that are talking about the concept of XRP reaching very high prices this market cycle. In fact, we're even talking about $50 plus. Now, I have said many times on the channel that although to be honest with you, I don't think it's crazy the idea of XRP hitting triple digits, being over $100 at some point in the future without some sort of timeline being predicted. The concept of that, I don't know if it's going to happen. Not crazy. There's way more than enough money on the planet to bid the price of XRP up that high, given the right amount of time, whatever that would end up being. That's definitely not crazy. Now, as far as it hitting that level this cycle, or even $50 this cycle, I don't think that's remotely probable. I'm just being honest with you. I'd love to see it. XRP is my largest individual holding, so don't get me wrong. I'm just being honest with you. I don't think it's remotely probable. But it's a fun thing to think through, and it's not impossible, and I'll acknowledge this. Look, if a crazy amount of money flows into crypto, and there have been instances where subjectively crazy amounts of money have flowed into crypto, and if Bitcoin then goes way higher than what almost anybody is expecting this market cycle, say it does go to 250,000, 300,000, 350,000, if it actually did that, well, then not only would I not think it's improbable for XRP to hit those higher price levels this market cycle, at that point, I would think it's probable for XRP to be getting in that range where it's $50 plus. It would be weird to me if XRP didn't, if you're talking about Bitcoin, or at least getting close. If Bitcoin gets that high, yeah. So I'll tell you why, and I'll show you at the beginning part of this video why a couple chart analysts are talking about this, and basically just kind of crunching some numbers to get a feel for what it might look like, because frankly, Bitcoin leads the market, Ethereum leads alts, and XRP historically has a bit of a competitive nature, running up against Ethereum historically. So what happens with Ethereum, it definitely matters for XRP, because that's an indication of how much money's in the space. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. As I record this video, it is 5:06 p.m. Central Time, which is my time zone. It's Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025. XRP is $2.84. We had a little bit of relief here. XRP hitting earlier today as high as $2.88. A similar story for Bitcoin. It's hanging out around $112,000 right now with a 24-hour high of $112,482. 24-hour low of $110,647. And as you'll see a little bit later in the video, one popular chart analyst is saying, yeah, you're probably going to get this. It's what he saw in the cards. And if you want to get into the nitty gritty, you should just go to his YouTube channel. You should just, follow him on X as I do. He's just a wealth of knowledge. He's one of the best chart analysts out there. But he acknowledges that there's at least a possibility that the bottom's in, but more on that in a second. First, let's have a little bit of fun playing with some XRP price action here. And so, again, if Bitcoin goes crazy, then it's no longer crazy to think that XRP could hit $50 this market cycle. But if Bitcoin is going to peak around $140,000, $150,000, $160,000, anywhere in that range, I don't think it's remotely likely you're going to see XRP get this high. But even someone like me, who is more conservative in nature in terms of expectations for XRP prices market cycle, even I will acknowledge that it's not impossible for this to happen. I will cede that ground. And if my suspicions end up being incorrect, well, I have no ego, so I'll be happy to admit it on the channel. I will be partying with you, very thrilled for you, cheering you on from the sidelines, because that will mean I've sold. But if it goes that high, I'll have sold all of my XRP on the way up, and I'll be very happy for that. That'd be ridiculously life-changing for me. I don't need $50 XRP. And if some of you do, that's perfectly fine. There's some possibility that we could get there. But here's what chart analyst Greg Crypto had to say about this, because in a separate post, he had noted that it's possible that Ethereum could get up to $22,000. And so here's what he had to say. And this is kind of a thoughtful way of looking at this. So he said, let's crunch some numbers. As of now, the market cap ratio between Ethereum and XRP is 31%. So let's break this down. Market cap calculations. If XRP represents 31% of Ethereum's market cap, and the current price of Ethereum is $4,400, we can calculate the potential increase. And folks, that is true. At the time we posted this, XRP has about 31% of the market cap of Ethereum. And then he says going from $4,400 to $22,000. So, and that's the price. Just to be clear, some people might not have a great, recall of what the price of Ethereum is. So I'll note, as the time I'm recording this, it's 4,472 for 1 Ether. So he's saying if ETH goes from about $4,400 to where it was when he posted this to $22,000, which he thinks is possible at least, that's approximately a 5-fold increase. Massive increase. And so he says if we multiply Ethereum's market cap by 500%, we get $4,400, so $22,000 times 5, $22,000. So that brings Ethereum's market cap to $2.63 trillion. So that would be more than a little bit of an increase. The market cap for ETH right now, $562 billion. So to go from $562 billion to, as eGreg Crypto cites here, $2.63 trillion, that's a big jump. Now, I will say there are lots of reputable analysts that think that that's possible. Some think it's likely. I don't know if that's a majority opinion, but I have seen some reputable analysts out there saying, yeah, it's possible Ethereum could get that high. Not just eGreg Crypto. There are all sorts of analysts that have at least acknowledged it's possible. I don't see that as the base case for most analysts. But then he says here, so what about XRP's market cap? He says, now let's find 31% of Ethereum's total market cap. So basically he's taking 30. So again, XRP's got about 31% of Ethereum's market cap right now. So if Ethereum goes to 2.63 trillion in market cap and XRP it continues to have 31% of whatever Ethereum's market cap is, that would mean that XRP would have an 816 billion market cap. Now, as I record this, the market cap is 169 billion. So you're talking about going from 169 billion to 816 billion, which, that'd be pretty massive. I think that would be life-changing for a lot of people listening right now. And he says, finally, to find the price per XRP, then he does some math, and he comes out to it being $13.70. So think about that. That would be gigantic. I would consider that wildly successful. If XRP hits $13.70 this market cycle, I would say that's wildly successful, because you got to take into consideration XRP bottomed at 28 cents in June of 2022. So that means it had a bottom of 28 cents and ran to $13.70. Yeah, that is unquestionably massive, especially for a large cap coin. That is truly jaw-dropping if we get that. I know some of you want higher, and maybe you'll get it. I don't know for sure, but I'm just have some perspective here. That is, even if it's not what you want and you want the price to go higher, okay, I respect that. But that's still impressive. At least acknowledge that. It just is. And so he says, so if these calculations hold, we could be looking at XRP price of around $13.70. Let's keep our eyes on the market. We are not taking into consideration that XRP market cap did overcome Ethereum market cap. This is a simulation where the percentage ratio between Ethereum and XRP holds true at 31%. So if, and this is where it gets fun, and again, he's right. So XRP has had that number 2 spot in market cap in the past at several points in history, very briefly, but it has overtaken Ethereum, including in that 2017 bull run. And even if just for like a brief moment, XRP matches the peak of Ethereum at that point, you know what that means, right? That would be, oh my God, it'd be huge. XRP would be about, if to be clear, if Ether hits $22,000 per coin and XRP matches that in terms of market cap, that would be $46 per XRP, roughly. $46. Now, if Ether actually hits that, I have a hard time believing that XRP would only be at $13.70. I think that XRP would go way higher than that. And eGreg Crypto is not saying it would only be that. It was just a little exercise that he was going through. As he cites at the end here, he well knows that there's a historic precedent for XRP running up against Ethereum in terms of market cap. But think about that. Even if XRP were off by half, if Ethereum hits that, you're still looking at $23 XRP. And so you can see how you can get up there quickly under those particular circumstances. But that would have to mean that Bitcoin goes way higher than what most analysts that I follow think it's going to hit. And so for context, like, most analysts that I follow think it's probable that, Bitcoin's going to peak somewhere around $150,000 plus or minus a little bit. Credible Crypto thinks that, by the way, more from him a little bit later in the video, but so Credible Crypto has acknowledged, okay, it's possible. This is the highest I'd ever seen him say is not Looney Tunes, basically. Bitcoin could hit $300,000 this cycle, but Credible Crypto does not think that's remotely probable. So what we are talking about here is the highly improbable happening. Not the impossible, though. Not the impossible, but the highly improbable. And if that happens, yeah, you'd be looking at, if XRP matches this $46 XRP. And if Bitcoin goes that high, I would expect it to get somewhere approaching that. It'd be weird if it didn't. If there's that much money sloshing around, flowing into Bitcoin, and then it doesn't cycle through large caps, including XRP, like, come on. People are going to cycle it through, and profit's going to ultimately be taken, including in large caps and mid caps, and then in small caps and down the list. So that's what would happen. And then there's also this, and this is part of the reason that people are talking about some gigantic numbers here. Tom Lee is considered a very well-respected and reputable voice in finance in general, including in crypto. He is famous in crypto, but his beginnings were in traditional finance. He's a commentator on CNBC, so he's on national television all the time. He's running Fundstrat, an investment firm. He is an insightful individual with quite a track record. He said something here that I have a very hard time taking seriously, though. I really do. He has cited that it's plausible that in the short term, Ethereum could hit $62,000. $62,000. Now, I don't know if that would be possible if not given time restrictions. You just let enough time pass. It's gonna. I don't know. I mean, if without a time cap, it sounds a lot less crazy, because I think a lot of cryptos that are going to be long-term successful are going to have multi-trillion-dollar market caps, some in the tens of trillions, not many. So without a time restrictor, okay, it sounds less crazy, but $62,000? Do you know what that would mean for XRP? Well, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you here. And so Crypto Insight UK shared this video clip of Tom Lee talking about this $62,000 Ethereum token. And Crypto Insight UK, one of the many analysts I follow who accurately called XRP breaking out this cycle, he's been tracking XRP basically on a daily basis for years now, and he's got a great track record also. Crypto Insight UK said, if Ethereum goes to $62,000 this cycle, XRP goes to $50 plus. Okay, that I agree with. If Ethereum goes to $62,000 this cycle, that's an if, then XRP, yeah, it's hard for me to imagine XRP not at least hitting that, if not going substantially higher. So consider this. And again, keep in mind, as I cited, historically, XRP has fought for that number 2 spot in market cap against Ethereum. So if ETH actually hit, just a for fun exercise, okay? I don't talk about these high numbers that frequently, but let's just have a little fun here. Let's run through them so you can know if the unlikely, if the improbable happens, what might that look like for XRP? That's all this is. If Ethereum hits $62,000, that would be a $7.2 trillion market cap. So again, that would mean that Bitcoin's way, way, way higher than that at its peak. Way higher. Now, if XRP matches that $7.2 trillion market cap of ETH, that would make each XRP coin worth about $125. Okay. I do not think, I'll say it again, I do not think there's a snowball's chance in hell that happens this market cycle, although without a time cap, yeah, I don't think that's crazy. You let enough time pass, crypto gets adopted, XRP continues to be useful. That's not crazy. That's definitely not crazy. I don't know if it'll happen, but it's definitely not crazy. But if Ethereum is actually going to hit that level, then it's not crazy for XRP to get there. Because again, it historically has been coming for that number 2 spot. There's no indication that's going to be any different this market cycle. It was only different last market cycle because XRP was artificially suppressed by the SEC, by that lawsuit. That's all that was. Now, here's what Credible Crypto had to say. This is one of his more recent posts here. He shared, this post is literally from yesterday evening. So he's kind of predicting that we're going to see a bit of a relief rally, which at least this afternoon we've seen a little bit of something. People are getting optimistic again. I could see a lot more bullish posts popping up on social media. Yesterday evening, Credible Crypto shared this Bitcoin price chart, and he said, Right, so we've been holding up at local range highs for some hours now, and other alts are looking quite perky here. XRP, as I just shared in a recent post, looks ready for a rally. Ethereum looks primed as well for a move up to $4,700, has left behind equal lows. Not sure if we will take them before or after the relief rally. And Bitcoin itself looks like we could get a push up to $117,000 if we can hold it. And so, folks, we've seen a little bit of a jump, but he actually thinks it's possible in the short term we get a jump higher. That said, he's not completely convinced necessarily. That would be the indicator that we are off to the races and we're going to finally get that last parabolic push for Bitcoin. And so he also wrote, the built-up lows in the chart below on Bitcoin are likely to be taken. And so you can see what he's citing down here. Key swing lows at around 107,000. Although in validation for a scenario that he's been highlighting here to be closer to $105,000, he cited that level many times. He doesn't think we're going lower than that, though. So he says, again, the built-up lows in the chart below on Bitcoin are likely to be taken. That I am pretty confident about. What I am not confident about is if they will be taken before or after this relief rally. That seems to be brewing across the board right now. So he thinks they're going to happen. So if we start jumping up and we don't get down to those lows, he thinks there's a higher probability we actually will still come back down to grab them before then reversing upward finally and breaking out. So if that happens, it's going to torture you emotionally more. It doesn't matter. That in and of itself is not odd. It's not an indication of whether or not whether we will or won't have some final parabolic push. It's very normal in crypto. But he's just warning you that could happen. And the reason that I love to run through, one of the many reasons I love to run through this stuff, other than the fact it's just fun if you've got skin in the game to track this on a daily basis, is just because I recognize that the greatest risk factor for any human investing in crypto, it's yourself. It's your own human emotions and this and that and all the silly psychological stuff that comes along with it. And so knowing things that are likely or at least possibly could happen, including in the short term, that can help you to set your own expectations, get your mind right, so that if it happens and if it's negative, you're less likely to panic. If you know that there's a reasonable chance it could happen, even if it's a little bit less likely, then when it does, if it does happen anyway, you're not going to flip out and panic sell, you know? And I think that's of critical importance. That's why I love to track this stuff, and that's one of the many reasons that I make videos having to do with market activity on a daily basis, even though I personally refuse to respond to what happens in the short term. I buy stuff, I buy crypto, and then I hold for years and years and years and years on end. No matter what. Price goes up, okay. Price goes down, okay. I don't care. I've never cashed out to USD, and I've been holding crypto for almost 8 years. I've held XRP, and that's for almost that entire time. I first bought XRP November 17, 2017. I've never sold a single XRP. And so it's done quite well for me. Just hodling, it actually works. Having broad exposure to the crypto asset class, yes, it actually works. But to make sure that one's emotions are